Today we're talking about SmallRig's HawkLock Quick Release Advanced Cage Kit for the Sony FX3 and FX30. We'll cover what's in the box, mounting options, standard versus HawkLock versions, my final thoughts, and a subscriber's request. SmallRig's HawkLock Advanced Cage Kit is priced at $139.99 USD and comes in gunmetal gray. In the box we have the cage, top plate, hand strap, HDMI cable clamp, and handle extension. On the front of the cage, there is a 1/4-20 to attach the HDMI cable clamp and two M4.7 threads for attaching a lens adapter support. On the top of the cage, there is a cold shoe receiver, recessed 1/4-20 with locating points, NATO rail, 4 1/4-20s, and a single 3/16 with locating points. On the bottom of the cage, there is a power cable cutout, hinge arm, QD socket, integrated Arca Swiss plate, 3 1/4-20s, single 3/16, and a dual head wrench. On the left side of the cage, there is a wrist strap holder, NATO rail, single 1/4-20 with locating points, single M4.7 thread for mounting the optional USB-C and multi-cable clamp, 3 1/4-20s with the top having a locating point, but all are covered when the HDMI cable clamp is attached. On the right side of the cage, there is 4 1/4-20s, a single 1/4-20 with locating points, and two wrist strap holders with the strap attached. On the top of the extension handle, there is a NATO rail, 2 3/16 with locating points, 1 1/4-20 with locating points, and 3 1/4-20s. On the back of the extension handle, there is a cold shoe receiver. Comparing SmallRig's standard cage to the HawkLock cage, the NATO top plate on the HawkLock cage is shifted forward to make the hot shoe more accessible for compatible microphones. The Sony XLR top handle is not one of them, but the XLR K3M is. With respect to mounting, there are some differences between the two cages. On the top of the cage, the HawkLock has 4 1/4-20s and a 3/16 with locating points, whereas the standard version has 2 1/4-20s, a 3/16 with locating points, and a NATO locking pin. On the left side of the cage, the HawkLock has an additional M4.7 thread for the USB-C and multi-cable clamp. It also has a 1/4-20 with locating points, whereas the standard version has a 3/16 with locating points and a recessed 1/4-20 with a single locating point. On the bottom of the cage, the HawkLock has 3 1/4-20s, whereas the standard version has 5 1/4-20s. On the front of the cage, the HawkLock has two M4.7s for the lens adapter support, while the standard version does not have any. As for similarities, the two cages both have the same black Mamba hand strap, mounting thread structure on the right side, cold shoe receiver and recessed 1/4-20 with locating points on the top, power cable cutout, hinge arm, QD socket, and integrated Arca Swiss plate on the bottom, and HDMI cable clamp. Next, when comparing the extension handles, both have similar mounting points, except the standard version has two more 1/4-20 threads on each side, a single 3/16 with 4 locating points rather than 2, and a hand grip that has a spot for 2 fingers. But where the HawkLock version really pulls ahead is, it has a much sturdier build with its closed ring design. It claims to have a 20 kilogram, 44-pound load capacity, and I believe it. Most other XLR extension handles I've tried with the FX3, FX30 don't solve the problem that the handle bends under heavy load. This is what makes the HawkLock design superior in my opinion. As for my final thoughts on the HawkLock cage kit, I think it's better than the standard version and provides the most useful features and security for the price amongst its competitors. The extension handle solves the bending problem of the FX3, FX30 audio handle. Further, it adds a USB-C and multi-cable clamp attachment to the cage, which no other manufacturer does. This component is essential for protecting ports when using power delivery and/or start-stop handles. However, I do wish it was included in the kit. Finally, moving the top handle forward to accommodate specific hot shoe microphones and accessories is genius. I do have a subscriber's request I'd like to cover in this video. He wanted me to mount every FX3, FX30 cage I've reviewed onto the SmallRig V-mount battery mount plate along with the VB99 Pro Mini V-mount battery. Then see how the FX3, FX30 in these cages interacts with the V-mount battery mount plate when the screen of the FX3, FX30 is opened and then left to rest against the VB99 Pro. First, when attaching SmallRig's HawkLock cage, the screen is able to swivel freely around and rest against the battery with no problems. However, if the USB-C and multi-cable clamp is attached, it has a very narrow range of motion. Second, when attaching the SmallRig standard cage, the screen is able to swivel freely around and rest against the battery with no problems. It is harder to center the V-mount battery mount plate on the standard version versus the HawkLock version because there is no marking on the front of the cage. Third, when attaching Tilta's V1 cage, the screen is able to swivel freely around and rest against the battery with no problems. Similar to the SmallRig standard cage, it is harder to center the V-mount battery mount plate because there is no marking on the front of the cage. Fourth, when attaching Tilta's V2 cage, the screen is able to swivel freely around and rest against the battery with no problems. Similar to the last two cages, it is harder to center the V-mount battery mount plate because there is no marking on the front of the cage. Fifth, when attaching Kondor Blue's cage V2, the screen is able to swivel freely around and rest against the battery with no problems. But the V-mount release button is partially blocked when the screen is resting near the battery. In addition, there is no marking to center the cage on the V-mount battery mount plate, but I was able to use the M4 marking instead. 6. When attaching wooden camera's half cage, the screen is able to swivel freely around and rest against the battery with no problems. I should note that the ARCA plate on the cage was a bit bigger and harder to slide in and lock down. It also has the same centering problem of most of the other cages. If you got value from this video, please like. If you want more content on camera accessories, please subscribe. If you have any questions, comments, or requests, please leave them down below. Thanks for watching, and goodbye for now.